Est-ce que les exemptions que M. Trudeau a annoncées vendredi, c'est juste pour tous les Canadiens, ça?
Bon, écoutez, je pense que ce qu'on a pu démontrer, c'est que face à une crise d'abordabilité qu'on a pu adapter, je ne dis pas que la prise de décision a été l'idéal, mais je pense qu'elle était importante. C'est clair que la lutte au changement climatique, c'est le défi de notre génération. Si on veut vraiment préserver tout ce qu'on a, tout ce qu'on tient de cher, mais c'est clair aussi que dans une situation de demande inélastique, comme on voit dans les pays de l'Atlantique, dans les maritimes, c'est quelque chose, c'est une situation où on se doit d'adapter. Alors, moi, je pense que
Qu'est-ce qui la rend non idéale, justement?
Bien, clairement, je pense qu'il y a des gens qui vont dire ici et là, est-ce qu'on devrait couper dans la taxe sur l'essence? Est-ce qu'on devrait couper pour les gens qui chauffent au gaz naturel? Je pense ce qu'on sait dans la dynamique qui existe, surtout en milieu rural, en Atlantique surtout, où une bonne proportion des gens dépendent de l'huile pour chauffer leur maison, que ces gens-là ont de la difficulté à s'adapter. Donc, c'est une question d'abord. C'est pas tout le monde. Il y a des gens qui peuvent s'adapter à d'autres moyens, mais on le sait très bien qu'en Atlantique, c'est un peu plus difficile. C'est pour la raison pour laquelle les pompes à chauffage ont été une option qui ont été
retenues. If it's not ideal, though, to make this one carve-out on heating oil, which is more emissions intensive than natural gas, how do you explain to people in rural parts of the country that aren't in Atlantic Canada who are using propane or natural gas to heat their homes that they don't also deserve that same carve-out?
Well, I think you'll find that relative to the climate prices, those have been increases in prices that have not occurred as drastically as heating oil. Clearly, in areas where demand is inelastic, particularly in Atlantic Canada, and it is very polluting. It is something I think was a reasonable thing for our government to do. When I say it's not ideal, obviously everyone wants to fight climate change, but we are facing affordability crises that we have to be able to adapt in a nimble way.
But isn't the rebate supposed to cover that?
I'll just finish my thought. Yes, absolutely, the rebate is supposed to capture that, and I think making sure that we are staying nimble, that we are responding to reasonable requests from Canadians, particularly where the way I've conceptualized it is inelastic demand. We have to be flexible, and this is a reasonable position for the government to take. Obviously, you'll hear naysayers, people that didn't like the carbon pricing in the first place. So I wouldn't get too distracted by that.
Même au sein du cabinet, il y a des gens qui ne sont pas d'accord avec ça.
Je vais continuer.
Par rapport à l'immigration, vous avez dit le mois dernier que vous ne voyez pas de scénario dans lequel les cibles baisseraient. Est-ce que c'est encore votre point de vue? Il y a un sondage aujourd'hui qui dit que l'appui des Canadiens à l'immigration est en chute.
Bien, je vous inviterais à... D'un, je ne vois pas un scénario où on diminuerait les niveaux. De deux, je vous inviterais à regarder minutieusement le sondage en tant que tel, parce que ce n'est pas une plaidoirie contre l'immigration, mais plutôt une plaidoirie pour qu'on s'organise d'une façon qu'on ne l'a pas faite par le passé, c'est-à-dire qu'on s'arrange mieux, qu'on s'arrive mieux avec les niveaux des provinces, les demandes des provinces, les demandes de l'industrie, les demandes des syndicats pour des ouvriers. On ne peut pas réaliser notre plan ambitieux pour la construction, que ce soit en logement ou autre infrastructure, sans des nouveaux arrivants qui sont spécialisés en construction.
Sorry,
okay.
Do you think that the immigration numbers...
As I've said before, and I'll continue to say, I don't see, knowing what I know, a scenario in which it makes sense to drop the numbers. Again, I've always said that I'm not dogmatic, and we are tracking numbers, I think, more intensely than we have in the past in relation to a relatively detailed finding and poll that suggested that winds are turning towards, and views on immigration are turning. I would invite people to look at it more carefully. It isn't, I'm sorry, I'm reflecting in French now. It isn't a debate about decreasing immigration because people don't like immigrants. It's more a plea to government to get our acts together. And again, whether it's the housing crunch or other issues that are facing Canadians, particularly in affordability, often the tendency is to look at a simplistic solution where it's wildly complex, and you'll find politicians that'll give you this. Again, I'm just going to finish my thought. what Canadians are telling us to get our acts together, and I think that's what we need to do. I mean, what I'm hearing from industry, what I'm hearing from unions in particular, is the need for specialized workers. We need to fine-tune our tools, and that'll mean more coordination. Over the last 3 months, and I've only been immigration minister for 3 months, what people are clearly saying to me is that this needs to be more organized, more structured, and the solutions that the federal government provides in kind of matching hope with demand needs to really be more matched with matching supply.
À ce sujet, M. Miller, vous parlez de le meilleur enrhumage. Le Bloc québécois, justement, propose une motion aujourd'hui qui est à l'ordre du jour pour,
j'ai mon discours.
Ah, ben voilà. Pour faire en sorte qu'on consulte Québec. Et j'aimerais savoir...
Ben, on le fait déjà. Écoutez,
il demande de le faire plus, dans le fond.
L'accord Canada-Québec existe depuis que le Bloc existe lui-même, c'est-à-dire depuis 30 ans. Ils savent très bien que la vaste majorité des décisions sont prises par le Québec. Et on les appuie, on est toujours ouvert à les appuyer davantage. Ce qu'on entend des Canadiens, c'est qu'il faut qu'on s'organise tous les paliers de gouvernement pour s'assurer que les gens qui viennent ici sont mieux accueillis et mieux adaptés à la réalité canadienne. Donc, que ce soit dans notre responsabilité fédérale, surtout au niveau de la francisation, c'est-à-dire les francophones hors du Québec. Je m'attends à déposer un plan ambitieux, réaliste, mais m'assurer sur tous les plans qu'on est mieux coordonné. Le sondage...
Donc, vous voteriez avec la motion?
J'ai rien contre en soi la motion du Bloc. Je la trouve raisonnable. D'ailleurs, c'est quelque chose qu'on fait. Ce que je veux éviter, c'est que les gens aient signé quelque chose qui montre quoi que ce soit contre l'immigration. C'est ça la tendance que je veux éviter. Mais le texte en tant que tel du Bloc québécois ne me dérange aucunement.
2025, M. Miller, la cible, est-ce que c'est encore de 500 000?
Attendez 24 heures.
The Liberals launched an attack against Pierre Poilievre. What do you think of that approach?
Well, I think you've heard me in the past on my views about Mr. Poilievre. I think people need to see him for what he is. He's kind of a guy, when you're around him, you kind of want to check for your wallet afterwards. I have no particular like for him. Again, these things shouldn't necessarily be that personal, but in the case of Mr. Poilievre, I think he's a guy that's trying to take Canadians for a ride, and we can forgive ourselves for being fooled one time, but the second time I think can be quite dangerous. And so it is what it is. I don't think it's a question of being negative all the time, but about clearly showing Canadians in a way that we haven't been demonstrating, at least over the last little while, who this person really is, and to not be fooled by him. I think he's very, very dangerous for the state of democracy in which we see it, whether it's cheering on Freedom Convoy folks making insinuations about the Prime Minister and his so-called appearance on a passport. It's ridiculous, and I think it needs to be called out.
When was the first time?
Clarify though, not accepting other heating fuel. You've now climbed down.
That's very easy. That's very easy. Home heating oil is significantly more expensive. It has escalated significantly in the last couple of years. It is predominantly a rural thing that actually there is a lot of energy poverty concentrated with people who actually use home heating oil. We have actually come up with a solution to get them off of that and to reduce their overall expenditures on energy by installing a free heat pump.
But if the carbon tax actually works, why would you not just increase the rural rebate significantly rather than exempting home heating oil? Because you're sending two conflicting incentives. You're sending two conflicting signals. You are removing any fee.
No, we are pausing for 3 years. And during that period of time, we will be working with folks to actually ensure that they can install heat pumps to address the long-term affordability issues and to address the
can you clarity then say, are there no more carve-outs coming?
There will be no more carve-outs coming.
I was looking at the numbers. In Ontario, that's the problem. After Quebec, it's the province where, in absolute numbers, that's where the most people use heating oil.
That's
so
right.
Why not extend to them as well?
We do.
But they're
not the pilot program.
Yes.
No.
I was told by your team yesterday that only 3 provinces comply now.
When we started the oil to heat pump program, which is the $10,000 grant, we reached out to every province and territory and offered them the opportunity to actually co-deliver the program, okay? 3 provinces took us up on that: Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland. We are going back out to re-offer that to all of them The requirement is, for the additional $5,000 that we're putting in, they have to match it, and we will work on co-delivery. That applies to Ontario, and we're willing to start those conversations tomorrow.
Have you had those
Final
conversations
question,
yet?
please. Thank you.
I have reached out to some of my colleagues, and I will be reaching out to the rest of them in the next few days.
Monsieur Wilkinson, est-ce que c'était la bonne décision? Ou est-ce que vous pouvez dire qu'on est en train de prendre la taxe carbone, qui est une signature de votre gouvernement, et mettre des trous dedans?
Non. Nous avons mis en place une solution pour réduire les coûts de mazout pour les gens qui vivent principalement dans les régions rurales, pour réduire les coûts et pour assurer qu'on peut combattre le changement climatique. Et ça, c'est notre solution. Et je dois partir.
To get off of home heating and to be able to get on to something that is going to be much better for the climate. So that means that heat pumps, in this example, are going to save folks an enormous amount of money. They're going to get their climate rebate, and they're not going to be using home heating oil when the process is done. So it's about trying to acknowledge that the transition into more sustainable ways of living is challenging, and making sure that we help people to get there to do that.
Why not do the same as people on natural gas? We're hearing calls from other premiers. Natural gas users should get the same privilege. Why not them?
Well, I think that the home heating oil, we know, was a particular issue. The costs involved in home heating issue, the amount that it's risen, created a particular acuity in the problem that was there. But I think we have to help everybody find a way with heating pumps, as an example, or other sources of energy, be it geothermal or otherwise, to find more sustainable ways of heating our homes and looking at how we get to carbon neutrality. That's not an easy process, and I understand that that's a bumpy road. We're trying to help people on it, but we've got to save our planet.
What do you think of Mr. Moe saying that his province will no longer collect the carbon tax on anything?
Well, I think that everybody has to be responsible for two things. One, affordability, and secondly, our planet. And I would say to any premier or any politician who wants to only take action on one of those things, that they're being completely irresponsible. Yes, it's extremely hard to deal with the global challenges right now on affordability. We have a responsibility to our planet and to the future of this country to make sure that we're also taking action on climate change. So,
but I meant more specifically about the fact that they will not collect. I mean, can they do that? Is that responsible? What do you think?
I think that there's a lot of politics and a lot of saber-rattling that is happening, but I would ask people to step back and acknowledge that we cannot afford to make polluting free, that we have to find ways to work together to deal with climate, the damages of climate change. And the most effective mechanism to do that is a price on pollution. And we're going to continue doing that and working with provinces on it.
Monsieur Holland, sur les cibles d'immigration, est-ce que vous sentez une certaine pression, soit les stabiliser ou les ans, même de les revoir à la baisse, parce qu'il y a la d'accueil. Dans les systèmes de santé, il y a des pressions que ça met aussi. Donc, est-ce que vous sentez une certaine pression dans votre rôle?
Mais c'est un enjeu tellement complexe parce qu'on a besoin de personnes dans notre système de santé, des infirmières, des médecins, par exemple, des personnes qui travaillent partout dans notre système. Et aussi, on a besoin de personnes pour les travaux, pour les logements. Alors, les solutions...
On behalf of Albertans every day, and what we've done here is taken a national approach to a regional situation that is very important. We've shown flexibility, and if we take a look at the Alberta context, everyone, we have an exemption until 2035 to allow electricity companies to actually continue to use natural gas all the way till 2035. So this isn't the first time that we've seen exemptions across the country, and in the Alberta context, it's going to double. So en français, si on regarde ce qu'on fait en Alberta, ce qu'on donne aux Albertains ruraux, c'est qu'ils reçoivent 1 000 $ maintenant. Là, ça va doubler, et pour les Albertains, les Saskatchewaniens et les Manitobains en situation rurale, donc ils vont recevoir maintenant 2 000 $ par année. Et ce qu'on fait, c'est qu'on a une approche nationale qui prend en considération des réalités régionales. Et si on regarde en Alberta, on a déjà une exemption en ce qui concerne la génération de l'électricité, qu'on peut utiliser le gaz naturel d'ici 2035, qui est une exemption importante. Et si on parle de livrer les marchandises, George Hall et moi, on a livré des milliards de dollars pour les Albertains. On va continuer à le faire. Ça, c'est la responsabilité des députés qui sont en gouvernement. I'll get to everyone. Go ahead.
On Premier Smith's throne speech today, if you have some thoughts, and also her threat to go back to the Supreme Court over the carbon legislation.
I mean, look, that's always the Premier's right, but I found it very interesting that there was no mention of CPP in the Premier's throne speech. I mean, you're spending millions of dollars of Albertans' money trying to convince them to come out of something that's already the best in the world. It makes absolutely no sense to me. So when it comes to defending Albertans' decision, 94% right now, to stay in the CPP, George and I and this government are going to stay steadfast on that.
Monsieur Beau, ce que Monsieur Beau va faire, ou veut faire avec la taxe carbone et les compagnies provinciales. Est-ce que ça, c'est légal?
C'est pas légal dans la loi. C'est encore des premiers ministres qui veulent avoir leur opinion là-dessus, mais c'est pas permis selon la loi, et on peut demander Monsieur le ministre Bibeau là-dessus aussi. Mais regarde, je ressens le fait que les gens vont se prononcer sur ce qu'on a fait en Atlantique, mais collègues, si on veut voir qu'on va avoir un plan sur la réduction sur les émissions de gaz à effet de serre pour le long terme, c'est important qu'on est capable d'avoir une réaction, d'être responsable à ce qui se passe dans les différentes régions.
Justement, si on a un premier ministre qui est prêt à faire quelque chose d'illégal pour protester contre un geste de votre gouvernement, est-ce que c'est possible que vous avez raté la cible?
Non, je pense que ça, c'est pourquoi on a des cours. Si on a un premier ministre qui décide d'abroger une loi, ça va être au cours de lui dire qui avait tort.
Mais vous allez contester.
No. In fact, we want to make sure that, look, when we get people on heat pumps and when we make sure that people have an alternative fuel to heat, home heating oil, which has the largest greenhouse gas emissions, when over the 3 years we get people from home heating oil onto heat pumps, their greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced forever. And if you take a look at what we actually announced last week, the ability for us to have a matching program with provinces that want to work with us on heat pumps is part of what we announced last week. So, quite frankly, there's people in Edmonton Centre that I know that have talked to that said, hey, we'd love to have a heat pump too. Is that something we could do? We're ready to work with the government of Alberta if they want to do that.
Mr. Boissonnault, your colleague, Louis Hutchins, actually said that if Albertans wanted a break, they should elect more Liberals. So it makes it political, does it not?
I don't see it that way at all, and you can talk to Minister Hutchins about her comments. What I can say is that George and I govern for Albertans. There are two of us in the governing caucus, and I can tell you that if you take a look at our record, it stands for ourselves. Billions of dollars on carbon capture, use, and storage. We've got the world's largest net zero hydrogen plant coming to my city. We've got the Green Line, which is $3 billion, the Valley Line, which was over $1 billion from us. The Canada Child Benefit came in on our watch, and also the fact that we did childcare, which is saving Calgarians and Albertans and Edmontonians thousands of dollars a month, is stuff that we did on our watch. So we govern as a country, and representation matters. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell different regions of the country who they should vote for. I fight for every one of the votes that I get. I'll be doing again in 25, and that's something you can raise with my colleague. We govern for the country, and what we've done in this particular case on the gas emissions and home heating oil is to be responsive and flexible to a region of the country that simply doesn't have alternatives, and I do think it's going to help our plan succeed in the future.
De faire des exemptions sur la taxe carbone, est-ce que ça mine les effets qu'on pourrait avoir dans notre programme pour essayer de limiter l'augmentation des gaz à effet de serre et les changements climatiques? Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de l'annonce?
Moi, ce que je peux vous dire, c'est qu'au niveau des annonces qu'on fait, on met des moyens en place pour aider justement les familles à pouvoir être mieux en mesure de répondre aux changements climatiques pour diminuer les gaz à effet de serre.
Mais si on commence à prendre des exemptions, ça mine l'efficacité de la taxe carbone?
Vous savez, un plan, ça doit être souple et flexible, puis on doit s'adapter. Mais notre objectif demeure toujours le même, c'est les gaz à effet de serre.
À propos de la taxe carbone, à propos de... Pourquoi vous faites des gros yeux?
Elle s'applique pas au Québec, hein? Donc,
oui, non, mais je sais qu'elle s'applique pas au Québec, mais justement, il y a des gens qui vont avoir des rabais, mais pas les Québécois. Est-ce que ils devraient pas aussi avoir des rabais qui s'appliquent aux Québécois?
Regardez, ça fait une dizaine d'années que le Québec a choisi son mécanisme avec la bourse sur le carbone. Alors, je pense qu'on l'a bien intégré dans l'économie depuis longtemps.
Les Québécois, eux autres, ils aimeraient pas ça avoir plus d'argent dans leur poche, vous pensez?
Regardez. Le Québec a fait un choix qui est bien pour l'environnement. Et puis, c'est la bourse carbone qui s'applique.
Il y a quand même 180 000 foyers au Québec qui se chauffent encore au mazout. Pourquoi eux n'auraient pas le droit à cette aide de 20 000 $ pour changer leur fournaise?
Non, écoutez, on parle du prix sur la pollution. Le Québec a fait un choix il y a plus de 10 ans avec la bourse sur le carbone. Donc, on ne va pas jouer sur ce territoire-là au niveau fédéral.
Madame Bibeau, l'immigration, avec la crise du logement, est-ce que c'est le temps de baisser les cibles, les maintenir, les augmenter selon vous? Vous en pensez quoi, vous, personnellement?
Le dossier de l'immigration, c'est très complexe d'un point de vue humanitaire. On a des devoirs, puis on a la volonté d'accueillir. Au point de vue économique, on a besoin de plus de travailleurs. Mais en même temps, on sent très bien la pression, que ce soit pour le logement, pour l'accès aux médecins. Donc, c'est un dilemme, puis on va essayer de trouver le meilleur équilibre dans tout ça.
Mais vous, donc, vous préconisez quoi comme scénario?
Je pense pas que c'est noir ou blanc. Il faut trouver un juste équilibre entre tous ces enjeux.
Carbon tax?
I think we've been clear. We've made a decision on heating oil because it is particularly polluting. The inflation on heating oil has been very significant recently. So this is why we have chosen this specific situation. And we are doing it in collaboration with the provinces.
Just quickly, good morning. Do you think this is the end of the carbon tax that we're seeing ministers eat, Premiers Eby, Premier Smith, Premier Moe, Premier Ford? They're all saying what you've done with the home heating oil, tremendously unfair. And so you've got to take it off on natural gas, and your constituents must be complaining.
This was an opportunity for us to hear from low-income folks who are struggling with home heating, and it's also an opportunity for them to transition to heat pumps. Once they do that, they will not have to deal with home heating oil, and they'll transition to a better system.
But there's low-income folks on natural gas, though, too. Low-income people use other heat sources than heating oil. So why are low-income folks who use heating oil getting preferential treatment from your government, which just happens to also give preferential treatment to a stronghold for the Liberals?
It's about listening to low-income folks who needed to get some help to transition fossil fuel to a transition fuel, which is what they're doing. Once you get a heat pump, you not only address the heating concerns, but you move away from heating oil,
And you're saying that people with natural gas don't have those challenges?
Sujet de l'immigration, c'est quoi votre point de vue? Il y a des pressions au niveau du logement, l'appui à l'immigration est en baisse. Selon vous, est-ce que c'est le temps de couper? Faut-il maintenir ou au contraire augmenter? C'est quoi votre point de vue personnel à vous là-dessus?
Bien, il faut faire les deux. Il faut être évidemment raisonnable en matière d'immigration, reconnaissant les pressions que les nouveaux arrivants peuvent apporter sur le système de santé, sur le logement. Il faut aussi être lucide. On a besoin, au Canada et partout ailleurs, au Québec certainement, on a besoin de nouveaux arrivants, les services de garde, les hôpitaux, les écoles, les résidences pour aînés manquent de gens. Donc, c'est pas juste pour appuyer les besoins économiques qui sont très importants en matière de main-d'œuvre, mais c'est aussi appuyer la livraison de services essentiels à beaucoup de gens.
Craignez-vous un ressac, par exemple, avec le sondage aujourd'hui qui montre que l'appui à l'immigration est en forte baisse? Craignez-vous un ressac, que le grand consensus des Canadiens favorables à l'immigration s'effrite?
Non, je ne crains pas de ressac parce que les Canadiens, y compris les Québécois, ont toujours souhaité la venue de davantage de gens au pays pour nous aider à nous développer. Là-dessus, je dirais que les Québécois, quand on regarde les sondages, sont encore plus en faveur de l'immigration que la plupart des autres Canadiens. Mais ils veulent évidemment que ce soit fait de manière raisonnable, en tenant compte des pressions qu'une immigration trop importante pourrait apporter sur le système de santé et l'accès au logement.
Faire un gros trou dans la taxe carbone, taxe carbone, est-ce que ça mine son existence?
Non, l'engagement est solide. C'est pas juste l'engagement du Canada, c'est l'engagement de plus en plus d'autres pays. On voit en Europe, par exemple, un progrès significatif en matière de prix sur la pollution. C'est vers là qu'on se déplace en matière internationale. Beaucoup de questions de concurrence, de compétitivité sont reliées à l'imposition d'un prix sur la pollution ici au pays.
Oui, mais quand on commence à faire des exemptions, où est-ce qu'on s'arrête? Ça ne sera pas la dernière.
L'objectif, c'est d'accélérer la transition vers une énergie plus propre. On sait que c'est plus compliqué dans certains coins du pays, dans l'Atlantique en particulier, où encore trop peu de gens se chauffent au mazout. C'est pour ça qu'on a besoin de mettre d'autres mesures en place, comme celles qui facilitent l'abordabilité et l'accessibilité à des pompes, des thermopompes. Écoutez, on aimerait que le Canada soit uniforme, que tout le monde vive dans les mêmes circonstances. Au Québec, on a l'avantage d'avoir un chauffage davantage électrique. C'est une très bonne chose, mais au Canada Atlantique, c'est encore malheureusement un très grand nombre de gens qui doivent se chauffer au mazout.
What about people who use natural gas in Toronto? What is your explanation to your constituents about why they're still paying the carbon tax?
The carbon tax is actually a very effective mechanism that's been put in place to lower the consumption of carbon.
But your government removed it.
And all of my constituents receive quarterly a significant check that rebates to them the money that they spend on the carbon pricing, and so they benefit significantly.
But in Atlantic Canada, they'll get the rebate and won't pay the tax.
L'immigration, les cibles, est-ce qu'il faut augmenter, réduire, maintenir? Votre point de vue à vous, c'est quoi?
Bien, écoute, on verra, mais ce qui est important, c'est de s'assurer de la capacité d'intégration des immigrants, tenir compte des besoins. C'est ce qu'on fait déjà, d'ailleurs.
Mais est-ce qu'on tient assez compte? Il y a beaucoup de Canadiens, l'appui à l'immigration est en chute libre selon les sondages. Est-ce que c'est pas le moment de
on en tient compte toujours et on travaille avec les provinces là-dessus. Il y a des besoins importants lorsque quelqu'un vient ici, que ce soit au niveau de la santé, au niveau de l'éducation, au niveau du logement. On travaille avec les provinces là-dessus, mais l'immigration est importante.
Sentez-vous une pression à plafonner ou à arrêter au niveau de l'immigration?
Bien, il y a beaucoup de discussions actuellement, justement, sur les capacités d'absorption. Ça, il y en a, puis ça va continuer à en avoir, mais nous, ce qu'on doit s'assurer, c'est de collaborer avec les provinces pour que les provinces soient capables d'absorber l'immigration.
Comment vous répondez au changement sur la taxe carbone?
L'avantage du prix sur la pollution, c'est que là où il s'applique, l'argent est retourné aux familles. Et ça met plus d'argent dans les poches des familles de la classe moyenne. Il y a 80% des familles qui reçoivent plus d'argent dans leurs poches avec le prix sur la pollution. Et ça ne coûte rien au gouvernement canadien.
Mais si vous taxez les profits davantage, les grandes pétrolières, vous retournez les...
Effectivement, il pourrait y avoir des mesures fiscales additionnelles pour les entreprises, on en connaît plusieurs là, qui font des profits excédentaires. Mais pour le prix sur la pollution, la bonne chose, c'est que non seulement ça réduit la pollution, mais en plus, ça met plus d'argent dans les poches de la classe moyenne. Ça réduit la pauvreté, puis ça aide les gens à payer leurs factures.
Can you clarify your position, though? Because Mr. Vandal, on his way into cabinet, said there would be discussions about whether to further extend the carbon tax exemptions. Then Mr. Wilkinson said there will be no exemptions. So where is the government at on this?
There will be no more exemption, and the reason is that the price solution puts more money in the pocket of class Canadians.
Wouldn't have exempted home heating. Is that not true?
That is true. That is true for. That's because in Atlantic Canada, it takes more time for Canadians, more support for Canadians heating with oil to transit to a cleaner and more affordable option. Well, because more people there use oil to heat their homes.
Why is it harder to transfer from home heating oil?
Because there are more of them, and therefore the support that we're providing them with heat pumps is going to make it even more affordable to move them to a less expensive and cleaner form of home heating.
Garantir aux gens qu'il n'y aura pas d'autres exemptions quand même le ministre de l'Environnement, il n'y a pas si longtemps, disait qu'il n'y en aurait pas du tout d'exemption. Alors pourquoi les gens croiraient quand vous dites qu'aujourd'hui il n'y en aura pas d'autres exemptions?
Parce que l'exemption, elle est accordée pour des fins très spécifiques. On sait qu'en Atlantique, et c'est clair, on n'a pas besoin d'aller très loin en Atlantique pour le constater, qu'il y a encore beaucoup de gens qui se chauffent avec de l'huile. Le prix du mazout a beaucoup augmenté au cours des dernières années en raison des pressions sur le coût de l'énergie, qui sont des pressions mondiales. Ça fait mal aux familles là-bas, et on doit les encourager, les aider à aller vers des formes d'énergie plus propres et moins coûteuses. Mais le prix sur la pollution, c'était vrai avant l'annonce de la semaine passée. C'est maintenant tout aussi vrai. Le prix de la pollution met plus d'argent dans les poches de la classe moyenne que l'absence de prix sur la pollution. Et c'est vrai pour toutes les provinces et c'était vrai avant l'annonce de la semaine passée. C'est encore vrai.
Mr. O'Regan, do you think it's fair to only exempt home heating oil rather than natural gas? A lot of figures.
Sorry, at the beginning.
Do you think it's fair?
Yeah.
Why?
A lot more polluting, a lot more expensive, affects a lot more low-income households.
What do you make of Scott Lowe's statement that he's willing to not collect the carbon tax on natural gas heating.
I'd say before you consider that, sign up for our program. All the provinces can on home heating oil.
But
sign up. The Maritime and Atlantic Premium
But
Station.
in Saskatchewan, Alberta, it's mostly natural gas, as you know. You were Natural Resources Minister, so what's your message to people living in Saskatchewan, Alberta that see Atlantic Canadians getting a break, but not them?
We've had to suffer through home heating oil, which is not only a lot more expensive and a lot more polluting, but a lot more difficult to replace. So we're just trying to tackle a problem. In the same way that we're trying to tackle the problem of coal, as we did out west, and we're going to try and continue to do with maritime provinces. I just find it a bit rich that everybody is just getting so excited about carve-outs and exceptions and particularities to regions. That's how this country was built.
Why did Minister Hutchins make the comment she did? Because that comment seems to have escalated things. Her suggesting that the reason Atlantic Canada got this is that they have more Liberals and maybe the Prairie should elect it. Is that a helpful comment to be making in this debate?
Well, look, I'm not speaking for Minister Hutchins, but I know that because I was in the caucus with her, both Newfoundland and Labrador caucus, which took this to Atlantic caucus, where we found other people who were confronting the same thing, spending a summer with constituents who are scared to death about a source of home heating that was also always astronomically expensive, but only getting more expensive. I know because I used to be on home heating oil before I switched to electric, and the difference is unbelievable. But even for me, the capital cost of having to switch was really, really big. The Newfoundland and Labrador government had a good program that I was able to avail of. Now we're working with these governments to make sure that basically we're going to be giving out free heat pumps for anybody below the median income per household, and above that, interest-free. We're going to get people off of home heating oil and onto heat pumps, and we feel we can do that in 3 years. That, to me, is very, very, very good news, because it has been cost prohibitive for too many people who have wanted to do the right thing, who want to save money, many of whom are low income and couldn't afford that capital cost, and we're going to take it.
Why don't you just do that and not touch the tax?
Ooh, somebody take a turn.
Why don't you just do that, what you just explained, and not touch the carbon tax?
This gives them the exemption that we need over a 3-year period so that we were able to replace home heating oil. It is already so cost prohibitive that this just gives people an opportunity to do that. This is purely an affordability issue. It's affordability that will lead to lower emissions. So we found a targeted way to do this. We're going to do it.
Did you fear to lose seats, Minister?
What's that?
Did you fear to lose seats over this carbon tax?
I heard from my constituents overwhelmingly, and I can tell you, in Newfoundland and Labrador, rate mitigation because of Muskrat Falls is something that dictated our politics for the better part of 10 years. I'm happy that we were able to get a $5.2 billion deal for Newfoundland and Labrador ratepayers to make sure it did not happen on their backs. And I also know that in the research that we did and the data that I saw, it does not take much of a rate increase to throw, in my province, tens of thousands of people below the poverty line. Not on my watch. Where we can solve those problems, we will solve those problems.
Do you think that it should have been done earlier than for example, the heat pump subsidy? Because we've known that the carbon tax was a Liberal project since 2015, 2016, 2018. Couldn't it have been done earlier then to prepare for the entry of the tax? And then we started
the program when I was Natural Resources Minister, but the problem is that the cost was still so high. So even when we subsidized them at $5,000 or $10,000 a unit, you're still talking about a $24,000 per unit cost in total. So the quantum, the difference was just too big. Plus, we still need.
Heightened it earlier?
Well, regrets. I mean, I wish, but I mean, we didn't have the money at that time budgeted. We thought that there would be more of a buy-in, but there wasn't. And sometimes, the only way that you can model these things out is when you try them. And then you realize, okay, we need more. Okay, it's still too cost prohibitive. So let's try it again. Let's do it again. Let's see if this works. This is how we're going about it.
And do you think it's enough to help you in the polls? Because now it seems like, now that this one breach has been created, some environmentalists are saying the carbon tax is just going to crumble. do you think it's actually enough to help you in the polls and be worth the cost, I guess?
It's not about, well, look, helping with the polls. I don't like the apocalyptic talk. This is not the case. This is a case where we saw a very real problem, and we're trying to fix it.
What about that criticism?
To gain back the credibility you lost on your environmental message.
Well, that depends on who you're talking to. I mean, there's a very reputable ecological institute out of Halifax who thinks this is exactly the right thing to do. I think the proximity to the problem sometimes matters. Certainly people in Atlantic Canada, including environmental groups, would differ with that statement.
Pierre Poilievre, you're now a target for Pierre Poilievre. He's saying, look at their environmental plan. It's not fair.
He's the leader of the opposition. I've always been a target for Pierre Poilievre.
So this criticism that by exempting this one type of oil shows that if there's enough political pressure, perhaps more exemptions could be made. Does this weaken the credibility?
And this
of
is
the entire
not one
policy?
type of oil. This is one that's 50% of households in Prince Edward Island, 36% in Nova Scotia, 22% in Newfoundland and Labrador. That fundamentally affects low-income people. I think that we've been very consistent in making sure that we help low-income people in very trying times.
Could there be more concessions under the tax? I mean, the tax it just came into effect in those provinces July 1st. You knew that before. Why didn't you plan ahead?
Next question.
No, but why didn't you plan ahead? Because that's the argument here, is that there's always been a volatility in home heat and oil prices, so why wasn't there some planning that this might happen instead of letting it happen and then have to react retroactively, if you will?
One of the nice things about the price on pollution, and one of the reasons we chose it, is because it is market friendly and it's market responsive. So sometimes you have to wait for the response in order to find out, okay, is this measure working? How can we tweak it? How can we move it? And by doing that, because you're adapting to market conditions, to how people's behaviors, to their household incomes, we could never have projected, the times that we live in right now 2-3 years ago when I was Minister of Natural Resources and we introduced the heat pump program. So, you were always going to be in a position where it's like, why didn't you do it then? Why didn't you do it then? Why didn't you do it then? Well, we thought we were making a good start on it. We know now we need to improve it. We need to make it almost completely accessible to people. And now we're in a position where we will be giving people free heat pumps under household median income and above that, interest-free. I think that's a really good place to land.
On the heat pump issue, you said you want to work with the other provinces on this. A bunch of them are saying this is unfair, this is divisive. Do you see that being a barrier to actually working with them to get that goal accomplished?
I just got to keep working harder with them. Look, when I took Minister of Natural Resources and Minister of Labour, both of those positions, first places I flew with Alberta and Saskatchewan. If we don't have Alberta and Saskatchewan on side, we're never reaching net zero. That's a fact. So whoever is there, I will work with them. And if this is an issue, I will deal with it. It is a very personal issue for me because I am a minister from an oil-producing province.
What do you make of Premier Moe saying that he will no longer collect the carbon tax?
Sign up for our heat pump home heating oil program, because any province can. So, the unfairness behind this issue
But I'm talking
is not
about
clear to me.
collecting the tax. If they don't collect the tax, what happens?
That's beyond my remit, so I'm not going to pass a comment on it other than to say if it's an issue of fairness, this program is open to him as it was accepted by the Atlantic premiers.
We are hearing that around the cabinet table, not all ministers are happy with the decision. Do you feel that this is dividing cabinet or caucus? What's your take on that?
We know now.
Like, could this be damaging for the union?
I'm not talking about the mood around the cabinet table, no.
And
No, it's not good. No, it's frankly a career hazard if you start talking about that sort of thing.
So when you won't answer Ilan's question about why didn't you do this before, is it because you don't want to?
No. I think I did. I think I did following. No. It's just that this is imperfect. Trying to figure out this is an imperfect thing. And as I said when I was interviewed last night, get ready. Like if you think this is messy. We are the 4th biggest producers of oil in the world, the 5th biggest producers of natural gas, and we are attempting to hit net zero and do it in a way that it doesn't affect people in the pocketbook. This is the biggest single challenge, I would argue, that is confronting this country right now. It is going to go on for a long time. It will be tough, and it will be messy, and it will be hard. And this is just one of many, many days like this. Merci beaucoup.
How were discussions in cabinet? You said it though on the way in that there would be you wanted to have discussions about removing.
Cabinet confidentiality. I can't speak.
But can you just clarify though? What is your position on the way? And you said you wanted to have discussions about exempting carbon tax on
No,
one
no, I
thing?
never said that. I never said that. I said we're going to have good discussions, as we always do in cabinet.
But the question was specifically about carve-outs, and you said you're going to have good discussions.
We were going to have good discussions, and we did. That's all I'm going to say.
What do you think?
But I can say,
I
I can say that what we're doing is we are trying to get rid of homes of home heating oil in homes in areas where they are abundant. That policy is good across Canada. It's good in Manitoba, it's good in Ontario, it's good in the north. To get rid of home heating oil. There's a few.
Do you think your residents, in Manitoba?
The reason we want to get rid of home heating oil is because it's environmentally bad, it's very expensive, and they're located in areas that have there's energy poverty there. So people who use it have no choice. So we're going to get rid of home heating oil all over Canada and replace it with heating pumps, which is a great environmental policy.
In Manitoba who use natural gas will understand your government's argument that they deserve an exemption when they have home heating oil,
home
but
heating
not
oil
when
is
they use
about
natural gas.
6 times worse than natural gas in terms of environmental issues.
Which would suggest needing a carbon tax, not
What we're
revoking
trying
it.
to do is get rid of home heating oil all over Canada.
So will
and
your
that's our
residents,
policy.
will your voters understand that?
Are you getting pressure from your constituents on this? Have you
Not
heard?
at all.
Is
Not
the
at
door
all.
closed on carve-outs?
The door, listen, the door is closed on carve-outs as far as I'm concerned. This is a policy to get rid of home heating oil and replace it with heating pumps because it's environmentally much better and it saves money for the people who use it.
Thank
you.
Est-ce que vous sentez que les gens sont unis autour de la décision sur la création du carbone, l'exemption?
Oui, bien sûr. C'est une décision qu'on a prise pour aider les gens à transitionner d'une part de l'huile de chauffage vers des méthodes qui sont moins polluantes et plus efficaces et moins coûteuses aussi en bout de ligne.
Mais une fois que la brèche est ouverte, vous comprenez qu'il n'y a pas une politique qui est forte de ce gouvernement-là. Vous comprenez pas un principe, au fond. Pensez pas que ça peut être dommageable pour la marque libérale, ça, au final?
Bon, on a été clair là-dessus qu'on demeurait focusé sur le maintien du prix de la pollution. Parce qu'on doit continuer de faire le travail pour rencontrer nos objectifs pour 2030 et 2050 pour la carboneutralité. Puis une des façons de faire ça, c'est d'aider les gens justement à chauffer leur maison d'une façon qui est moins polluante. Et donc, les mesures qu'on a annoncées sont tout à fait en cohérence avec notre plan.
Il va y avoir d'autres exemptions.
Mr.
Hadju, any thoughts on the carve-outs here, especially when it comes to Indigenous communities that have to rely on things like diesel for their heat? Should they have some kind of carve-out as well?
Well, I mean, the great thing is that rural residents already get 10%, and now it will be a doubling of the rural rebate top-up, and so that is important for rural community residents, absolutely. And look, we're always working on reducing the cost of heating and diesel use in First Nations. In fact, Watay Power, the federal government funded about $1.5 billion towards a electric hookup of remote communities, and I was in Casablanca just a couple weeks ago as they celebrated connecting their grid to electricity. These are the kinds of actions that are going to help in the long run reduce our emissions and make life more affordable.
Thank you so much. The right now side, there's still like cost of living increases going on. In the north, it's just more expensive. I need more help for them.